The Sūtra, Questions Regarding Death and Transmigration. Homage to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Thus did I hear at one time. The Blessed One, seeing that the time had come to train all the various householders of the great city of Kapilavastu, went there with a retinue of 500 to cause them to generate faith. At that time, a man in the prime of his life called Shakyanandaja, who was cherished by all his relatives and praised by all, had died. In front of his body, his children, wife, relatives, and dependents had gathered together his horses, elephants, clothes, and a variety of ornaments, gold and silver, pearls, crystals, and other jewels, as well as a variety of delicious and sweet food and drink. They offered them, wailing, "We give these to Nandaja." This made King Shuddhodana wish to ask the Blessed One what benefit and good would ensue if, in such a fashion, offerings, food, and honors to the deceased were presented according to the Brahmin's formulae. He approached the Blessed One, prostrated, and asked, "Blessed One, would you allow me to ask some questions about what it is like for sentient beings to die?" The Blessed One replied, "O great King, ask whatever you wish. It will be explained to the great King's satisfaction." The great King Shuddhodana then asked the Blessed One, "Blessed One, regarding the rebirths of beings who pass from this world to the next, are gods reborn as gods? Likewise, are humans, animals, hungry ghosts, and hell beings also reborn consistently as their own kind, respectively as humans, animals, hungry ghosts, and hell beings? Or is it the case, Blessed One, that when gods pass from this life, they are reborn as humans and other kinds of beings? Likewise, are humans, animals, hungry ghosts, and hell beings reborn as other kinds of beings, such as gods and so forth as well? Or, Blessed One, when they pass from this life, do sentient beings become utterly non-existent, becoming like the ashes of a fire that has died out, and not taking any rebirth at all? Blessed One, is it really as the worldly say it is? Do all sentient beings live on after their deaths, befriending their kin in a beginningless lineage, including fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, and more, not taking rebirth in a future life, but living just as they do in this life? Blessed One, do those who are wealthy and proud in this life go on to be wealthy and proud in the hereafter too? And do those who are poor and humble in this life go on to be poor and humble in the next? Or do people simply switch back and forth between the two? Blessed One, is it really as the worldly say it is? Those who in this life ride horses and elephants, wear fine clothes and ornaments, eat food and drink, do they continue in their future lives to ride, dress, and eat in the same way? Blessed One, is it really as the worldly say it is? When their parents, siblings, and cousins, children, and so forth, give or dedicate small portions of food or drink to someone who has passed from this world, is the deceased then able to eat and drink inexhaustibly for many eons? Blessed One, is it really as the worldly say it is? When sentient beings pass on from this world, do they later, after death, tell their parents, siblings, children, and so forth the same things, such as stories and so forth, that they had told them earlier before they died? And do they later exhibit the same physical features to them as they had earlier before death? Are they seen and heard to do this? After these queries, the Blessed One replied to the King Shuddhodana, "O great King, with regard to your question as to whether gods are reborn as gods and so forth, the answer is no. Suppose that when gods died, they were reborn only as gods, and not reborn as other types of beings, and the same for humans and so forth. O great king, initially humans come from gods, and the three lower realms come from humans' engagement in non-virtue. Therefore, those gods and so forth who die are reborn in various other types of migrations. O great king, suppose, moreover, that the answer to this question of yours were to be yes. Then it would be logical that the quantities of the 6 types of beings would always be the same as they are now. But notice how the 3 lower realms are more numerously repopulated due to the preponderance of humans' engagement in non-virtue. Moreover, O great king, if the arhats of today come from the ranks of humans, then it cannot be right that beings are consistently reborn in their own types. What is more, it would be impossible for anyone to obtain the fruit of being an arhat. Therefore, O great king, through virtuous and non-virtuous actions, beings are reborn as different types, such as those in the heavens and those in the lower realms. O great king, regarding your question as to whether gods that die are reborn as other types of beings, such as humans and the like, the answer is yes. O great king, regarding your question as to whether sentient beings die and become utterly non-existent, like the ashes of a fire that has died out, and as to whether rebirth is utterly non-existent, the answer is no. O great king, just as when you have a seed, a fruit will come forth, so from the seed of this life, the fruit of the next life comes about. O great king, just as the sun rises, slowly sets, becomes obscured, and then rises again the following morning, so too one passes from this life and takes rebirth. O great king, sentient beings would become extinct species if they died without any subsequent rebirth. O great king, if we take the grass and trees outside too, those that have withered will grow again through the changing of the seasons. Likewise, sentient beings will be reborn and die through actions and afflicted emotions, which are like the changing of the seasons. So, O great king, know that there are future lives. O great king, you asked whether as the worldly say it is. You asked whether all sentient beings after their deaths live on, befriending their kin in a beginningless lineage, including parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and so forth, and not taking rebirth in a future life, but living just as they did in this life. O great king, in this life, when a parent or child and the like see each other, it is one embodied being seeing another, not one mind seeing another. If in this life the body perishes and is gone, then in the hereafter, how would one mind see another and befriend it? Children, nephews, and nieces who are alive and have physical forms cannot even see their deceased parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. Then how would disembodied, deceased people see and befriend their formless parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents? What is more, O great king, in this life, when the many parents, children, and other relatives get together, even then it is only their respective physical forms that appear. Unable to see even their own minds, how could children and other relatives ever see each other's minds? How would they see them after death? How would they, in an afterlife, first see the children, relatives, grandparents, and great-grandparents, and then befriend them. O great king, let us suppose that an ancestor, one who had no one before him at any point in beginningless time, and his presently existing descendants, were to befriend each other in a future life. Now there are at present many different clans, castes, factions, and parties, some of which have become enemies of each other, and whose places of residence, associates of clan and caste, language, and style of dress are neither heard of nor seen. Suppose that they too issued from the same original ancestor. How would you delineate which children and relatives do or do not befriend present children, relatives, grandfathers, and so forth? The offspring from this first ancestor, up to and including the presently existing relatives and children, would be alike in their respective affections and antagonisms for one another, just like the presently existing children and relatives. If this is so, who befriends whom, and who fails to befriend whom? People who are now living each apprehend their own factions and parties, saying, so-and-so is our ancestor, and they determine the factions and parties, saying, we are children of the same father as so-and-so. Suppose, too, that they now each grasped as our ancestors the lineage of all the fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, and great-great-grandfathers, all the way down to the first ancestor. That is, the lineage of all those who respectively apprehend each other as ancestors. And suppose, following what the worldly say, these ancestors did not take rebirth after passing from this world, but instead befriended children and relatives in an afterlife. Then they would have to befriend as one unified faction the presently different clans, castes, and factions, as well as all those people that have become enemies too. O great king, in this life, although people appear as embodied entities, nonetheless, when they are in the dark or hidden, they do not see one another. Then, given that deceased beings do not have any bodies, how could they see and thus befriend one another? O great king, if embodied sentient beings who are alive now cannot even make their bodies visible to people in some other country or in the different places that they do not see, then how could they ever make their bodies visible after death? O great king, you should not listen to worldly individuals who seek fame and gain, and thus deceive others with the tales they tell. O great king, you asked whether those who are wealthy and proud in this life are also wealthy and proud in the hereafter, whether the poor and humble in this life go on to be poor and humble in the next, or whether people switch between the two. O great king, just take sentient beings in this life who have not yet died. Some are wealthy and proud from the moment of birth, but are then poor and humble from the age of 50 or 60 onward into their own age, into their old age. Others are poor and humble from birth and throughout their youth, but then from the age of 50 or 60 up until their old age, they are wealthy and proud. If that is so, then it is all the more obvious that people's riches and poverty are impermanent when they are dead. O great king, to use an analogy, in this world, when conditions like warmth and moisture are present, grass, trees, and other plants grow leaves, but when it is cold and dry, they wither. Similarly, one becomes wealthy and proud due to conditions such as generosity, but poor and humble from theft and miserliness. O great king, some people are wealthy and proud from life to life, because they have always been generous. Others are poor and humble in some lives, or at the beginning or end of certain lives, because they were partial or had regrets about giving. Some are poor and humble life after life, because they always stole or were miserly. Yet others are wealthy and proud in some lives, or at the beginning or end of certain lives, because they regretted their theft and miserliness. O great king, being poor and humble does not come about through generosity. Being wealthy and proud does not come about through miserliness. One does not simply, arbitrarily, switch between riches and poverty from one life to the next. O great king, you asked whether what the worldly say is really true. You asked whether those who, in this life, ride horses and elephants and so forth, wear fine clothes and ornaments, and eat food and drink, continue in future lives after their deaths to ride, dress, eat, and drink in the same ways. O great king, when humans die, they take rebirth in the heavens or in the lower realms in line with how they had practiced virtuous or non-virtuous actions. O great king, it is not as the worldly say it is. What about an apparition of a deceased individual's style of dress? In the heavenly realm there exists an unfathomable, unimaginable, limitless world of Gandharvas. One type there is called the Gandharva who preys upon the minds of those on the verge of death. In search of the food that Gandharvas eat, they create an illusion of the body, clothes, ornaments, and style of dress of someone who lived previously. They thus create and display illusions of the style of dress and the speech of a deceased person. But there is more here, O great king. Not only Gandharvas, but other spirits, such as yakshas, pishachas, and bhutas, also seek to trick the deceased person's father, sons, relatives, and so forth. Thus, these demons use their worldly magical powers to know the distinctive signs, final resting place, and the history of the deceased individual, and then they use their demonic influence so that parents and others see and dream of that individual. Furthermore, O great king, consider the following. It is due also to the maturation of habitual tendencies stemming from long-standing association that one sees children and relatives, and that they appear in dreams. Suppose, for example, that a person dreamed of their own presently undeceased parents, relatives, servants, or any others who might befriend them, and as well dreamed of their pleasures coming from various enjoyments, or their pleasures and pains from grappling with enemies or thieves. If the parents, relatives, and servants they dreamed of, or any others appearing in their dream, actually were to have the feelings in question, just as that person dreamed they did, then that of which they dreamed would have been real. But how could the parents, relatives, and servants they dreamed of, or any others appearing in their dream, ever be thought to be real? O great king, even among living people, that which one person dreams is never felt by another. Then how could what is dreamed concerning a deceased person ever be that deceased person? What is involved is the maturation of habitual tendencies. O great king, there is yet another analogy for this being a matter of habitual tendencies. Suppose that a person left whatever castles, houses, and cities they had been in during an earlier part of their life, and that in the later part of their life, when they lived elsewhere, The city they knew previously was destroyed. This person dreams of the shape and size of their house as they were when it was neither destroyed nor scattered about, no different from before. If the city and the house were to have mental natures, then the mental nature of that house might have actually appeared to them. But since their house and city are earth and stone, then why would that person dreamed not be a maturation of their habitual tendencies? Likewise, that which has the distinctive signs of a now deceased person is comparable to the undestroyed house of one's dreams. And if the deceased individual's mind, too, had already taken rebirth in accordance with their previous actions, then could they actually appear to anyone? We conclude, O great King, that it is through the maturation of habitual tendencies that people see and dream of distinctive signs and styles of dress of now deceased individuals. Likewise, the appearances and occurrences in dreams of the deceased, holding swords and other weapons, wearing clothes and other ornaments, and riding their horses and elephants, and so forth, are also just appearances due to habitual tendencies. You should understand them along the lines of the analogy of the house. O great King, you asked whether it is as the worldly say it is. You asked whether those who have passed on from this world can eat and drink inexhaustibly for many eons the small portions of food and drink given and dedicated to them by their parents, siblings, and cousins, children, and other relatives. O great King, anywhere, be it on the 4 continents, in the chiliocosms, the dichiliocosms, the trichiliocosms, or in the limitless, unfathomable, unimaginable world systems, have you ever seen a sentient being who consumes one small portion of food and drink all the time and over many eons? Have you ever heard of such a sentient being? O great King, though the Chakravartin king has a wish-fulfilling gem that gives whatever he might wish, it came to exist because of immeasurable collections of merit collected earlier over numerous eons. It did not fall from the sky or emerge accidentally. Is it then reasonable that this small portion of food and drink would remain unexpended until the end of the eon? O great King, suppose that some living parents, children, siblings, and cousins who have a mutual relationship and wish to be of benefit to one another have not yet died and are still physically embodied. And suppose one of them went off to another country. Although any of the parents, children, siblings, or cousins might resolve to give and offer a lot of food and drink to that person, none of that would appear to the person who had gone off to the other country, even in their dreams, let alone food and drink in reality. So why even mention food and drink dedicated to people who have died and have no body? O great King, how would those people whose minds have separated from their bodies after death use their immaterial and formless minds to take possession of the real items of food and drink provided to them by their children, siblings, and the like? Why would this be a problem? The answer is that eating and chewing depend on the workings of body parts. In that case, are the workings of the parts of the body to be found present in the mind? The great King then asked, Blessed One, if that is the case, then is it useless to offer deceased individuals the food, drink, mounts, clothes, and ornaments that were beneficial to them in the present world? The Blessed One replied, O great King, take the case where a deceased person is being reborn in one of various different states of being, because actions he had done are ripening. And suppose people help that person by dedicating to him all sorts of virtuous actions that will constitute a collection of merit without any non-virtue. In that case, the person will be reborn in higher states, or attain liberation. On the other hand, when someone has already taken rebirth, then if one aids him through the dedication of a virtuous action that constitutes merit, that will aid the already reborn person to gain wealth, have good crops, more and more of the pleasures he wishes, as well as honor and respect from all his other fellow beings. However, it is not so that the deceased individual stays on in the world of death, without rebirth, and taking on food and drink, mounts, clothing, and ornaments. O great king, suppose people say that things seen by the worldly and dreamed of by parents and others are dedicated to the deceased, and that consequently the dead person is satisfied with the food and drink, rides the mounts, and wears the clothes and ornaments. While this might appear to be so, there are demons and Gandharvas who prey upon the minds of those on the verge of death, and who make such apparitions manifest in that way, and make them seem to be saying they are unsatisfied with the food and drink, do not have the mounts, and do not wear the clothes and ornaments. O great king, the worldly say the following: whatever words sentient beings say, and stories they tell, and whatever physical features they exhibit to their parents, siblings, and so forth, when on the verge of death, later, after death, they will tell the same stories and so forth to their parents, siblings, and children that they had told earlier before they died, and they will exhibit the same physical features to them later as they had earlier before their death. Such visions and exhibitions supposedly exist. The great king has asked whether what the worldly say is true or not. O great king, take the case of speech. Speech depends upon the vocal tract of an embodied person. So then, if the body of the dead person is left behind in this world, how could their incorporeal mind ever speak? Now, when we say that a dead person has a body, we mean that they have taken rebirth, for which parents were required. So there is no world of death either. O great king, what the worldly call characteristics and distinctive signs of the living are things fabricated by a type of Gandharva called the pervader. The so-called vichana sorts of Gandharvas, the talkative sorts of yakshas, and the inquisitive bahinita sorts of bhutas pervade the minds of all the dying, just like a strong wind that instantly blows over the wide plains and waters. They conjure up such things, and then, in order to trick the worldly, these demons tell stories in the same way the deceased people used to do earlier, and exhibit their characteristic styles of dress. At that time, Devadatta was present, and not believing what the Blessed One had said, he questioned him. Gautama, you have explained whatever distinctive signs there are, or are not, in the afterlife that follows death. From whom did you first hear about them, Gautama? When did you come to know about them? Who heard and knew about them along with you? The Blessed One replied, Devadatta, for countless eons I practiced numerous sorts of austerities, such as sacrificing my body. I purified all obstructions, perfectly accumulated a great collection of merit, and thus attained omniscient wisdom. There is nothing I do not know concerning any knowable matter before me in the past, or in the limitless 10 directions in the present, or concerning all knowable matters that will occur in the future. Just as when the sun shines here in Jambudvipa, it does not shine over things gradually or in stages, but shines clearly all at once, so too I know, in one instant, everything that can be known. And thus it is said that I possess the exalted wisdom that knows all aspects. Devadatta did not believe in these sorts of statements either. In order to test whether the Blessed One actually did possess omniscience, he cut samples of a vast number of different sorts of wood, that is, of all the types of trees here on Jambudvipa, including sandalwood, waved-leaf fig trees, catechu, and so forth. He burnt them and made small bags for the ashes of each one. So as not to be mistaken about which type of wood each bag of ash came from, he labeled each bag of ash with the appropriate name. He then went to the Blessed One and asked, "Blessed One, if you possess omniscient wisdom, then which bag of ash belongs to which tree?" And he showed him the small bags of ashes, one by one. For each small bag, the Blessed One explained unmistakenly which tree the ash had come from, saying, "This one is sandalwood ash, this one is waved-leaf fig tree ash, this one is chatechu ash, and so forth. Devadatta thus came to believe that the Blessed One really did have omniscient wisdom. Thinking that the Blessed One's pronouncements on death were all true, he praised him in the following terms. The Blessed One is omniscient. What he has said about death must be true. Without previously seeing them or hearing of them, he recognizes these different varieties of ashes of wood. He thus praised him and was left at a loss for words. At that time, the Shakya Mahamaman was present too. Not believing what the Blessed One had said about death, he asked, "Blessed One, did you directly perceive what you have explained about the death of beings, or did you hear it from someone else?" The Blessed One replied, "Mahanaman, there is nothing in the world that my Buddha eye does not see. When a fresh gooseberry is placed in the palm of the hand, all the features of the hand are conspicuous in it. Likewise, there is no knowable thing whatsoever in the 3 times that I do not see. I do not base myself on hearsay." In order to test whether the Buddha was truly omniscient or not, Shakya Mahanaman then went to the great city of Kapilavastu. From each household he took a small bag of rice, and so that he would not mistake whose rice was whose, he wrote down the name of every Shakya he took them from, and put these names inside the small bags. When the rice bags came to be a full load for an elephant, he went to the Blessed One and requested of him, "Blessed One, if your Buddha eye sees all, then please recognize, without opening them, which Shakya's small bags of rice are which." And he put down the elephant's load of small bags in front of the Buddha. The Blessed One held up each small bag in turn and said, "This one belongs to Shakya Nandaka, this one belongs to Shakya Kaya, this one belongs to Shakya Desire, and so forth, assigning the appropriate Shakya to each bag of rice, and thus unmistakenly, step by step, stating the names till they were finished. With this, Sakya Mahanaman and the others were all convinced that the Blessed One's Buddha eye saw all things. They thought that the Blessed One's explanation about death was surely right, and commended him as follows. With his Buddha eye, he sees all. Unlike the worldly, he does not lie. He unmistakably knows the small bags of rice of everyone in Kapilavastu. The world lies about beings' deaths and how they appear in the beyond. The Blessed One has spoken truly. Praise and homage to you who sees all. They were at a loss for words after offering such praises, and thus remained silent. The Father, the great King, then spoke. Blessed One, there are sentient beings who have committed non-virtues, such as the actions that bring immediate retribution, on account of which they come to experience the unbearable ripening of such actions. Please explain what sorts of things they should do to attain happiness. The Blessed One replied, O great King, those sentient beings who have committed non-virtuous actions, like those actions that bring immediate retribution, will become pure if they sincerely believe in the ripening of the actions and confess them deeply. If at death they regret the negative actions they committed earlier, pay homage, and go for refuge to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, their negativities will become pure. Such beings will also be reborn in high states. Do not think that there are no future lives, nor should you think that rebirth is caused by God, arbitrarily, or through mere caprice and the like. Have no attachment to any worldly happiness or cyclic existence. O great King, when you pass from this world to the next and take rebirth, it is not something permanent that transmigrates in this way, nor something that is extinguished, halted, and hence non-existent. It is neither uncaused, nor arisen from something without a cause, nor made by an external agent. Understand it to be produced by an aggregate of causes and conditions, that is, actions and afflictive emotions. The great King then asked, Blessed One, if the transmigration and rebirth of sentient beings is not the transmigration of something permanent, nor of something extinguished, nor without a cause, nor made by an external agent, and if, moreover, the established fact of rebirth in the world beyond is difficult to understand, are there any analogies for it? The Blessed One replied, O great King, there are 8 analogies for rebirth. The analogy of students learning that which is recited by the teacher, a lamp being lit from another lamp, a reflection occurring because of a mirror, an impression and image coming from a stamp, fire coming from a magnifying glass, a sprout from a seed, the production of saliva when someone says the word sa, and the sound of an echo. O great King, in these 8 analogies, the fact that earlier things give rise to the later ones illustrates how nothing permanent transmigrates. The fact that later things arise from earlier ones illustrates how transmigration and rebirth do not occur without a cause, and that they are not of something extinguished and halted. Furthermore, O great King, of all these analogies are things that come about when 3 conditions are gathered together. When there are students, teachers, and sense faculties, we have recitation and language learning. When there exist butter, wicks, and vessels, we have lamps. When there are bright skies, faces, and mirrors, we have reflections. When there are signets, lumps of clay, and human manual effort, we have impressions and images from stamps. When there are crystals, sunlight, grass, and wood, we get fire. When there are seeds, earth, and moisture, we get sprouts. When there is salt, a previous experience of drinking salty water, and when the word sour is pronounced, people then begin to salivate. When someone speaks, when there is no other loud sound, and when there is a nearby mountain, then an echo will occur. These are all analogies showing how sentient beings' rebirths are not made by external agents, but are produced through the causal conditions of actions and afflictive emotions. Furthermore, O great King, the teacher illustrates this life, the student illustrates future lives, recitation illustrates how consciousness bridges the gap between lives. The earlier lamp illustrates this present life. The later lamp illustrates future lives. Though the later lamp arose from the earlier lamp, the fact that one existed before the other illustrates how nothing permanent transmigrates. That the latter one arose from the earlier one illustrates how things do not occur without causes. The mirror illustrates how future lives exist because present lives exist, how nothing real transmigrates, and how future lives definitely do exist. The stamp illustrates how one takes rebirth in a future life in accordance with actions one has done in this life. The magnifying glass illustrates how one exists as one type of being and is then reborn as another. The seed illustrates how one does not cease and become non-existent. The sour taste illustrates how one takes rebirth due to actions one has experienced. The echoing sound illustrates how one takes a rebirth when causes and conditions are present without other annulling conditions. It illustrates how a reborn individual is not the same as or different from that of the earlier life. O great King, if I had not explained all 8 analogies, but had taught only some of them, then those who maintain that rebirth is due to God, arbitrary, due to mere caprice, or without any causes, would use the Shramana Gautama's analogy of recitation to say that consciousness will transmigrate to the next life without losing the aggregates and consciousness of this life. To refute those who might say this, I taught the remaining analogies. Some might use the analogy of the lamp to say that the aggregates in both this life and the next exist at one and the same time. To refute them, I taught the remaining analogies. Some others might use the mirror analogy to say that the lame are reborn lame, and the fair are reborn fair, because the mirror illustrates similarity. To refute them, I taught the remaining analogies. Others might use the analogy of the stamp to say that gods who have died are reborn as gods, and that humans who have died are reborn as humans. To refute them, I taught the remaining analogies. Yet others might use the analogy of the magnifying glass to say that from virtue come the lower realms, and from non-virtue comes high status, because a magnifying glass illustrates dissimilarity. To refute them, I taught the remaining analogies. Some might use the analogy of the seed to say that one consciousness grows to be many. To refute them, I taught the remaining analogies. Some, too, might use the analogy of a sour taste, because it illustrates experience, to say that those who have a history of rebirth as gods will be reborn as gods, even though they have not done virtuous deeds, and that those who have a history of rebirth in the lower realms will be reborn in the lower realms, even though they have done no non-virtuous deeds. To refute them, I taught the remaining analogies. Yet some others might use the analogy of the echoing sound to say that rebirth does not come from causes and conditions, as they would maintain that such an analogy illustrates agency. To refute them, I taught the remaining analogies. It is for these reasons that I taught all 8 analogies. O great King, it is not the case that life ceases with no rebirth in the hereafter, and that it is extinguished and halted. Neither is this life a permanent entity that transmigrates to the hereafter intact. People cannot take rebirth in the hereafter without any dependence upon this life. Nor do they have a rebirth by simply thinking that they will take such and such a rebirth. Rebirth does not occur because people think that they rely on God and the like, and that they will thus be reborn in the heavens. Nor do people take rebirth thinking that they will be reborn wherever they wish, whether in the heavens or in the lower realms. And rebirth does not occur because people think that they will in any case be reborn, even without doing anything, and irrespective of causes and conditions. Nor can one say that one's aggregates perish, one dies, and that afterward there is nothing at all. One cannot say either that after death in this world, people in the afterlife abide continuously in the world of death, and thus do whatever they did in this life without taking rebirth. Nor can one say that consciousness takes rebirth without any halt to the consciousness one has in the present life. One cannot say that the aggregates of this life and the next exist at the same time. Nor can one say that the lame are reborn lame, the fair are reborn fair, and so forth. One cannot say that gods who have died are reborn as gods, and that humans who have died are reborn as humans. Nor can one say that virtue leads to the lower realms, and that non-virtue leads to higher status. Many consciousnesses do not develop from one. Beings are not reborn as gods without having practiced virtue, nor are they reborn in the lower realms without having committed some non-virtuous deeds. Rebirth is not brought about through the actions of an external agent. Let us suppose someone asks why these things are not the case. Here is what we would reply. Someone might say about the analogy of a recitation that it shows that one takes rebirth in the next life without the consciousness of this life perishing. To eliminate this misinterpretation, we put forth the analogy of the seed. Indeed, if a sprout were to be produced without the seed being destroyed, then the positions of those who accept real selves would be right. However, the sprout is produced upon the destruction of the seed, that is, from something that has changed from what it was earlier on. Someone might say about the analogy of the lamp that it shows that the aggregates of this life and the next exist at one and the same time, because when one lamp is lit from another, they both exist at the same time. It is in order to rule out this misinterpretation that we put forth the analogy of echoing sound. An echo does not resound without a person having first spoken, and does not occur at the same time as that speech. So the aggregates do not exist at the same time. About the illustration of the mirror, it might be said that lame people are born from lame people because of the similarity the mirror illustrates. To refute such ideas, we put forth the analogy of the magnifying glass, for a magnifying glass gives rise to a fire from which it is dissimilar. Someone might say that the analogy of the stamp shows that dead gods are born as gods, and dead people as people. To rule this out, we put forth the analogy of a recitation. What illustrates the present life is the teacher, and what illustrates the next life is the student. As they are different, the teacher is not the student, nor the student the teacher. About the analogy of the magnifying glass, someone might say that it is an illustration of dissimilarity, and thus shows that virtue leads to lower states and non-virtue to higher states. To rule this out, we put forth the analogy of a lamp. A lamp does not give rise to something dissimilar to a lamp, but rather to a lamp. Similarly, it is logical that virtue gives rise to high status and non-virtue to lower status. As for the analogy of the seed, someone might say that it shows that many different consciousnesses develop. To rule this out, we put forth the analogy of the stamp, for the image produced in the lump of clay is not other than that of the stamp. Because of the analogy of the sour taste, someone might say that those who experience a history of birth as gods will always be born as gods, in spite of doing no virtue, and that those who experience a history of birth in the lower realms will always be born in lower realms, though they have done no non-virtue. To refute this, we put forth the illustration of the mirror. For just as a face appears in a mirror as it is, so too the similar results of virtue and non-virtue would match their respective causes, and it would thus be contradictory to make them dissimilar. Some might say, with regard to the analogy of echoing sound, that echoes do not come about unless they are made by an external agent, that is, unless someone shouts. And analogously, so it might be said, beings are not born unless made by an external agent. To rule out that misinterpretation, we put forth the illustration of the sour taste. The point is that it is those who have previously had the experience of eating or drinking something who will later salivate when it is described, and likewise it is because of previously engaging in actions and afflictions that one will later take rebirth. O great King, let it be known that such are the ways sentient beings take birth, perish, and transmigrate from this life to the next. All the retinue then rejoiced and praised what the Blessed One had said. Thus ends the Sūtra of the teaching regarding death and transmigration.